Check, check, check. All right, what's up, everybody? We're live. It's time for a new episode of the Hot Box. Every week here, me and Gooey talking about some weird stuff. So let's play the intro and we'll start the show.
On the seventh day,
by the heathen devil weed marijuana.
Go it.
The terrors of tripping on top.
Be there! Scour the spaceways! Explore vast alien worlds! This tin right here contains the whole
I
rigmarole.
used to smoke about an ounce of hash every day, and it made me go a little bonkers.
Maybe if I occupy his mind with more duties, I can control his space.
Hi, big fat doobies. Hi.
Hi, what's up, everybody? Today's Sunday, February 14th, 2016. This is episode 173 of the Hot Box. I'm Matt, that's Gooey. Today we got a special guest for you. We've been trying to get this guy on for a while. Came out with this awesome documentary called Grounded. You can find it at groundedthemovie.com. His name's Sean Patrick Crowell. And he has two uncles that have a pretty interesting story. And I know, Gooey, you haven't watched it. I've watched it, so I don't want to give away any spoilers. So I'll let Sean kind of give you the rundown of what this is about, and then we'll get into the whole behind the scenes and how this story came to be. So welcome to the Hot Box, Sean. It's great to have you.
Thanks, Matt. Good. It's great to be here. I appreciate you reaching out to me.
Yeah, the film was great. And after, we've seen a lot of these come out on Netflix, like Kid Cannabis and stuff like that, that are more not maybe as true to life as you would like it. So when I saw your email and checked it out, it was like, wow, this is like a real story of some real shit that happened back in the 70s. This is cool. So yeah, tell us about it.
Basically, the story is about my two uncles who were marijuana smugglers in the 70s. And it had been kind of evolved as when I was a kid, I would just hear little bits of it, I knew my one uncle was a pilot. We came from a family of pilots, and he'd become a pilot. And you would hear man, we landed on this dirt strip, and then everything would kind of get hushed. And then, there was, by the time I was 10, I knew what these guys did, but you never really, it's not like everybody sat down on Thanksgiving and told the whole story. So as I got into college, I would learn more and more and more. And then finally, I was just I got to make a movie about this. So I'd done a previous documentary and kind of almost in a way to prepare me to do this one. So, and that was kind of how it all evolved.
That's awesome. I can totally see that, being a kid and how overhearing bits and pieces, and then everyone getting real quiet when you came in the room. And that was the third time we landed on this dirt strip. Oh, the kids in the room. Shh.
Yeah, exactly. And eventually it just kind of became.
You kind of did just some detective work, and it became more and more interesting. And then you're like, okay, this has to be made. People have to hear this story.
Yeah, obviously my uncles. For a lot of that time period, lived in our apartment with my mom and I. So I would, I knew probably a lot more than most, 7 to 10-year-olds,
right.
12 and 13-year-olds knew. So, but kind of in, we're all Irish, so we kind of make light of dark situations and different things like that. So, that was always kind of the joke and stuff like that. So it was really kind of fun, and the storytelling aspect is just revealed to me as I got older and older. And then what really when I made the decision, the producer on this film and my last film, a woman named Liz Newman, who I worked with for a long time. And I remember going to her office and really pitching her okay, let's do this. Because it's not like we're not out there making documentary film. People aren't out there making money. They're out there making stories. So
right.
You really have to sell a good story to get a team together to be willing to sacrifice their time and their money and their efforts to make this movie. So I sat down with her, and her first instinct was, let's call them. So we actually did a conference call, and we all just started talking to them about it. And it was basically my uncles at that point, their amazing story of going down to Colombia many, many, many times and sneaking these planes, these DC-4s and DC-3s into the United States clandestinely, and then distributing this pot all over the country. That was just pretty, it was kind of edge of your seat storytelling. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
fun.
it's very reminiscent of the movie Blow when they first start out with the weed, and then obviously they got into other things. But yeah, I can see that as like, wow, this is like that story, but it's real. Like this is your family. That's great.
And it wasn't like a one-time thing. I mean, they did
Yeah. This was our job, right?
Yeah.
9 to 5, flying planes.
But I think that's where, like, I mean, I think you do it once or twice. I mean, I know it was thrilling to be involved in, but the stories come back, and then all of a sudden the filter comes off. 5, 6, 7 years in. So you would just hear these crazy stories. So, but really, as a filmmaker, that's just one side of the story. And I knew that going in, even though my uncles are both really charming storytellers, and they're fun, and you really do listen to them, I knew I needed to get somebody from the other side. And I was like, how the hell am I going to do that? Because undercover cops aren't people that have news stories written. They don't name them in news stories. I mean, you have to really kind of search. So what I did, I just started sending out blind emails, and finally got one back from a guy who was a police officer and knew the two guys. And after he about a month of me back and forth with this guy, his name is Jerry Ward and Jerry Schubel were the two undercover guys, and another gentleman had put me in touch with them eventually after a month, after he realized I wasn't some crazy person. So their end of the story was held up equally. So it was really great.
They did a little vetting, it seems like, and they're like, all right, he's just trying to get both sides of the story. We can do that. It happened long enough ago, It's okay.
I mean, they were both retired at the time, but they were both very much still law enforcement.
Yeah, it had a very a very good old boy feel when he was the way he was talking about it. It was that whole part was cool.
And good old boy in the best sense of the word.
Yeah.
That's how those guys are, and they were very. We flew them to Los Angeles to do their interviews, and we flew them together. And Jerry Ward brought his wife, and I remember I picked them up at the airport, and I was very excited to meet them. And I took them back to the hotel, and I said, okay, well, I'll come back and we'll have drinks and go have dinner. And they said, okay, great. So I went back to the bar, and they came down and they sat down, and they had this like massive. They brought the case file, so all the transcripts from the their dealings were there. So for me, I was thrilled because that was a year of research that I was literally being handed.
Yeah.
And then they had this little manila folder on the top, and they just sat it there, and they didn't say anything, but I knew what it was. I didn't know what the manila folder was, but I knew that was the case file. And they said, see that manila folder there? And I was like, yeah. And they said, you've been checked out by every government organization in the country. And I was like, part of me was like, well, that's a boring story. I can't even believe you have a manila folder in there. And we go, yeah, there's nothing in it. Your life is pretty much milquetoast. I'm like, yeah, but like the back of your mind, you're a little bit creeped out by that.
Yeah, that's odd. These guys have a giant file, and he has none.
Yeah, it was very funny.
That's cool. They seem like, I mean, the feeling that came across in the film, like they seem like they were really good sports about it. Like they almost knew that, like, oh, these guys are just dealing with cannabis. They're not like running guns. They're not running coke. Like they knew they had to do it because it was their job. And I'm sure they believed in it, back then, the 70s, with the whole reefer madness thing. But it seems like in hindsight, they had a very lighthearted feel about it.
I think that, one, they took their job very seriously.
Yeah.
But within the parameters of that, I think that that's what they did every day. They chased guys like my uncles every day, and people that were, like coke smugglers and, those
people nowhere near as charismatic as your uncle, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, exactly. So, I think they're actually, when they get into at that time, we're talking the 80s, the early 80s, so the Reagan era 80s, before things got pretty ugly. And at that time, it was almost like a romance with these guys. They're very much, cat and mouse game. Where are they going to put these guns? You're going to get it.
Right.
That was kind of a cool thing. And I don't think the film would be nearly as good without their side of the story, because you get these 4 perspectives of the same night. And it's just really kind of interesting that way.
Yeah, you get the whole story. It's definitely excellent. And the way you put it together, like the way the storytelling flows throughout with the different people involved and stuff, it was really well done. I can see how that probably took a very long time to put together.
Well, it was kind of like, from the filmmaker's perspective, I was really trying to get all of them to tell. I mean, they all have 4 separate versions of the same story. And there's obviously a little bit more of a lead in with my uncles, but then, you know, at a very, in an apex, they all come together and they're telling the same story. And the more that I could get, and those guys, we had worked for months, you know, to get the story the way that, you know, to refresh their memories and to get it all very fluent. And I considered the success in the fact that it flowed from each storyteller, you know, one story. So it was really kind of nice to have all their perspectives kind of woven into one. It wasn't easy, but, you know, I had a lot of great people, you know, with me, you know, to do that. And one of them is Brian Davison, our editor. He did a fantastic job. So it was a true collaboration with him.
Yeah, it definitely shows. It's really well done. Before we get into some like maybe teaser tidbits of some of the stories of what happened, did you have any questions, Gooey, just to start off?
Well, you know, I saw the trailer. I apologize, I haven't seen the entire documentary, and I was just really impressed by the professionalism of the whole thing. I mean, it's a real freaking documentary. This is not some little YouTube, you know, backyard project. It's the real deal, and these guys seem very I don't know, sincere and real, and you know, it's not something that is, you know, so gritty the children, you know, our teenage children can't see it or anything like that. But I think it's really a manifestation of the reality of prohibition. If it was illegal, you said they did most of their smuggling in the 1980s?
Yeah, early 70s and 80s.
Okay, you know, in 70s was, like you were saying, kind of the cool period. In 80s, you know, Reagan gets in there and it gets all creepy. Right. But just it's really a great example of what prohibition produced, and it's neat that during the 70s they were able to kind of turn that into, like you say, a cat and mouse game, because that's kind of the innocent, optimistic side of prohibition, if there is one.
Well, it's kind of like, I mean, the law enforcement guys, you know, really looked at these folks as like as hippies. I mean, they weren't some you know, gun-toting, you know, coked out crazy people. Yeah. My Uncle Terry, who was the pilot, he said at that time, he was like, you know, nobody's going to kill you over a plane load of pot. They'll kill you over a plane load of coke, you know. Yeah, and then we're talking like 1983. So, and that was a very real thing. He said, you know, there's no reason. I mean, they were not into guns or anything like that. Nice. So, you know, and I think that kind of resonated, you know, certainly with the police officers that were involved, you know, once they get, I mean, by the time the undercover cops knew well before this whole thing went down that there weren't going to be any guns. There wasn't going to be some big gunfight, but they still had to do their job and do due diligence and protect themselves. So, I mean, you know, I don't think that they, for a minute, thought that there was going to be any kind of craziness, you know, once they exposed themselves as cops, you know, and you know, moved the whole story forward. So,
I wonder, like, I wonder, as the cops, like, how do you get suited up and geared up and prepared for like hippies with a pilot license with a plane full of weed? You know, like, what is the proper?
The unfortunate thing is you have to get yourself geared up. And up like you're dealing with the worst drug smokers.
Yeah, definitely. I just picture like what's going through some of their minds. Like, it's really like, I'm just going out there in jeans and a flannel. Like, this is only going to take a minute.
Yeah. Well, if you look at some of the photos we had, that was the other great thing with having the cooperation of the law enforcement guys, was that they gave me all the photos from the spoiler alert from the bus at the end of the film. I mean, I had all the mug shots of my uncles and all their friends that I knew.
That's amazing.
People that ate at our house, and like, hey. So we actually, an odd thing is that we had not odd, but we had we were invited to go to the Pittsburgh Independent Film Festival, and it was a big crowd. It was actually a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. And afterward, there was a question and answer, and there now you have these old hippies that were there. Then the only point of reference that for some of them that I have were their mugshots, and that's like weird because some of them were they were teachers and stuff like that, and I tried to. Some of the folks, like when I did get all the mugshots, I would talk to my uncles and I go, "What's this guy doing now? What's this guy doing now? I don't want to get anybody." I don't want anybody to jeopardize their job now, by being exposed, and stuff. So we were very careful about anybody's reputations, but it was very funny at that screening. There's like, there was a picture of me in that movie. That's awesome. You gonna copy that? I'm like, that's the worst night of your life. You want to copy the picture?
Oh,
So
that's awesome.
very funny. Yeah.
Did they just gave you like the whole stack basically, and you just got to pick through it, and then you kind of ran it by your uncles to make sure? Like, I'm curious, like, did you have a lot you couldn't use because of that, or was it all?
You know what? To a T, I think there was like one guy's name that we kind of blurred out just simply because, he has a very now I think actually it's not a big deal anymore because he's retired. But it's just more of a family thing. Like,
sure.
Just didn't want to, I didn't want to drag anybody into this that didn't want to be into it. And I mean, as a filmmaker, like if I didn't have a family connection to it, I mean, a lot of filmmakers would say, "No, screw it. They were there the night of the bus. We're gonna,
right,
blast their name all over the place." And I'm not that kind of guy. I'm just like, hey, I don't want to. And the other thing is, like, when we started this film. There were no states with legalized marijuana. I mean, that was a 5-year project for me to start this film. I think we started in 2009. There were, at the time, I don't believe there were any, so marijuana in some places was still pretty, taboo, although like the ice was cracking for sure. And it's funny because I would project out when we had the movie done, like what was the reception going to be? And I said, well, it's still a great story. It doesn't really, your attitudes on pot are not going to be changed by this film.
Right. This isn't that kind of documentary.
Yeah,
this
exactly.
is telling a story, and what you take from that is what you perceive.
Yeah. And my view of the story was that you were my uncles. They were just they were my uncles. I loved them. They were the greatest guys in my life. And that, I was a little bit stunned that, I was like, well, they got busted, and then, I met these police officers who, didn't know me from Adam. And they were just gracious and kind, and I was really grateful for their participation. And I think that, I wouldn't, it was funny because there were a lot of police officers I knew that came to the screening, and they're like, man, when you're describing, all the stuff that the cops did as undercover guys, I really related to that. And I was like, wow, that was something I didn't even think of,
right.
Because I'd been so exposed, my whole life with my uncle's side of the story. So, it was really kind of interesting. And now what I really find is that what we have as far as a film is more of a historical record of what a lot of people did to get pot into the country.
Yeah.
Right. That's the thing. Like, they weren't the only ones doing that. This
no.
is like one story of one cross section of time, in that whole era.
Right. I mean, there's law enforcement guys showed me, like, they had it was probably every week, that they're, something was coming in, or they got called about the actual strip that these guys used in Hurtsboro, Alabama was a massively long runway, and it was privately owned by a company at the time that was like it was called the Seahoy Plantation. I don't remember exactly what they did, but it was their private strip that they would fly their customers into to go hunting and different things like that. But they were always getting broken into because people were using the strip, whether it was, a twin engine Cessna or something like that laying in there, or in my uncle's case, a DC-4. So they were always finding the bolts broken, and, people were in a hurry. So they're throwing shit all over the runways and stuff like that. So, I mean, these people would come in and, having their private jets come in, and they can't land because there's crap on the runway. So it's like, they were getting sick of it. And they actually had motion detectors and different things that strip, just to thwart that kind of stuff. So it was really kind of interesting. So it was also very interesting for me to go back to that. That landing strip and property had been sold a few times. And again, when I started the film, I was like, I need to go film at this landing strip. And it's got a couple of buildings on the site, but it's literally in the middle of the woods. I mean, there's woods all around the place. So I reached out to the police, the officers that were helping us, and I said, hey, can you get me onto that place? And they said, no problem. We've got contacts with the former governor, and, you know, we can take care of that. And I was like, great. So they worked at it for about 4 or 5 weeks. And they came back and said, you know, we had the former governor, his office call, and they said, no, they didn't want anything to do with the drug movie. So I was like, shit, I'm going to be on the outside of a fence, you know, shooting a couple old hangars. I mean, how exciting is that? And then Jerry Ward, who I'll never forget it when he said it, he goes, well, you know, they can keep you from being on the property, but they can't keep you from being above it. And I was
Nice.
like, huh. So, I mean, now what you do is go get a drone, but what I had to do is
Yeah.
I had to go get a helicopter, and I was freaked out because I had, I put this film together with a lot of graciousness from my friends and being cameras and time and different things like that. And a friend of mine, Dwight Tudor, who's a director of photography, he had this really nice, beautiful camera. And I said, hey, I'm going to go shoot some B-roll down in Alabama. Can I use your camera? And he goes, yeah, no problem, man. And I was like, oh, thanks so much.
Hell yeah.
That's what I was doing. We got this helicopter, took the doors off it. I put a seatbelt around my waist, and I was literally hanging out on the skids at 2 feet over this runway, just trying to get basically what would be dolly shots now.
Right.
But I was talking to the pilot. I was like, just get me as low as you can and just do some little shots across the field and across the area. And my biggest fear was that somebody was going to come out and shoot at us.
Right, while you're hanging out of this helicopter.
My second biggest fear was that somebody would take a picture of it and give it to Dwight, and he'd see what I was doing.
Right. Was that your first time in an actual helicopter? Because that's quite the.
Well, it was funny because my grandfather, my uncle's dad, he was a pilot, and he would take me flying when I was a kid. And I remember specifically, we were coming out of the hangar in this plane, and there was a helicopter sitting there, and he goes, you see what that is? And I said, yeah, it's a helicopter. He goes, nope, that's 10,000 pieces flying in close formation. Don't ever get in one. Of course, that's resonating in my mind. I'm just like, oh my God, if I crash on the exact site where my uncles are busted,
right?
It's my buddy's camera. It's going to be a disaster.
Oh man.
So it was really funny. But to answer your question, I think that was the first time I was in helicopters. So.
That's awesome. Yeah. Do you think, like, with legalization happening kind of slowly, but hopefully surely, it was a better time to come out with that movie? Like, it sounds like you've had this story for quite a while, and I know it does take a long time to put this stuff together, but you probably could have released it sometime earlier. But it seems like the climate of cannabis and everyone being more open about it makes them more receptive.
Yeah, it makes it. I mean, what Guru is saying, it's like it's not a shoot 'em up movie or something like that,
right.
And you can park your kids down with. It's now. What I really didn't anticipate it being was it's more of like a historical archive of what my uncles went through, but also what a lot of people went through. I mean, there's been some comments it's on Amazon Prime and iTunes and a couple other, like Google Play and stuff like that. And I've noticed, like, some people comment, man, I remember doing that. You know, I'll read the comments every once in a while. I'm like, wow, that's cool.
That's the cool thing about the internet, right? Like, there's so many people. You're bound to resonate with at least a handful of them, and you're going to get a few of those comments that's like, I did that too. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of neat. I was like, that's cool. And in my mind, I'm like, this is really resonating as a nice little piece of history. You know, like, a lot of people don't even think about that now. You know, I don't think. I mean, now it's certainly in Los Angeles, it's as easy as getting a medicinal marijuana card and going to Venice or your favorite place in Eagle Rock or wherever. And I think there's now a generation of people that will have a real disconnect to what it took to get, you know, that joint in your hand in, you know, in the 80s, 90s, you know, early 2000s.
The logistics involved of international smuggling so that you can smoke a joint or two, you know, after school. Like, back then, that there was a lot involved. Here, like, kids that are growing up right now in Washington and like I said, in California, even in Oregon, like, they turn 18 and they can just go down to the shop, or 21 and they can just go down to the shop, depending on your state.
It's
it's like not even a thing, right? Like it's completely out of their heads as it doesn't exist.
And you know that the certainly after the just say no policy of Nancy Reagan and stuff like that, and yeah, but you know, my uncles had shared some stories with me while they were in Colombia of just like random planes that would just show up, and my uncles, and they'd have a fuel bladder in them, and they'd fill them up, and these guys would just load up with whatever they could and take off. And you know, they're just scratching their head going, these guys are flying over the Caribbean, you know, right now. You know, who knows how many people didn't make it? You know, it's really interesting.
Probably a lot of planes in the water over there.
Yeah, and there was an old rock group called REO Speedwagon. They had some hits in the 70s, kind of a big band. But they had this really cool Lockheed Electra that was the type of plane that Amelia Earhart flew. And they had it all painted up, and they had the band's logo on the side. And some of their roadies and the pilot took it to Colombia to bring back some pot, and they got arrested
in the REO plane
in Colombia. My uncle specifically said, he goes, I remember he would fly commercially to Colombia to check out strips and stuff like that. And he goes, I remember being in, I forget what town he was in, where he landed, and he goes, and there it was, REO. Then they called it the REO Speedwagon, sitting on the end of the runway, you know, blocked up with, you know. He goes, I don't know if that band ever got that plane back.
Police taped up and everything. Wow.
Yeah, it's just all beat up. It's a beautiful airplane, unfortunately.
Oh man,
it was pretty funny.
I'm looking through the website here. If you want to check it out, groundedthemovie.com. There's a great trailer you can see, and then you can find out where you can get, like Sean said, it's on iTunes, Amazon, Google Play Movies and stuff. Tell us a little bit more about your team.
I was super fortunate. I mean, I work in the film business professionally too, so I had a lot of exposure to you know, different filmmakers. And the director of photography on this film, Andrew Rawson, is a lifelong friend, and Chuck Ozeas and Jim Deneau, all three of them shot different parts of the film. Jim just shot Trumbo. Chuck is a very successful commercial director of photography, and Andy just shot telenovela and a couple other great TV shows. And so just to be around those guys and to have their input, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. I mean, and they're all really good friends. And Brian Davison, the editor, we've done 2 films together. Liz Newman and I have worked for 10 years on different television shows and different things like that. So when you start assembling this team, and like I said earlier, it's not like Warner Brothers is going, hey, Sean, we want to give you a ton of money to make a documentary. I mean, that's not how most documentaries are made. Right. Most documentaries are made with somebody with an idea, and they commit to making it, and then, you know, you might get lucky and HBO says, hey, we really like that, you know, we'll give you some money to complete it, or we'll put it on our network, or you get lucky with distribution. I mean, all those kind of numbers things that are really kind of boring, but documentaries are generally made out of like a lot of effort, a lot of sleepless nights, and a lot of love and friendship. So
for sure,
generally how they get done.
Is it something that you'll get up on Netflix, or is that something you have to approach them, or how does that sort of distribution work?
We're really hoping that, I mean, that's the cash cow that everybody wants, because they actually will pay you a lump sum money, the lump sum for your film, the rights of your film for a certain amount of years. So right. The distributor that we have, Passion River out of New York, they've been wonderful. And Matt Levy there has been really great with us and trying to expose our film to different platforms. So one of which is Netflix. They had a meeting over the summer, and they tabled it. So we're hoping that the meeting will come. There'll be another meeting in the spring of this year, and they'll hopefully run with it. So that's why, I mean, we've kind of, we've been asking people to download it on iTunes and Google Play and all those type of things. Like, please write a review. Let us know what you're thinking of, because they do look at that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
so,
you can go to them and be like, look, this movie is awesome, and it's not just me that thinks so. Like, all of these other people think so. So put it on Netflix and let's let everybody watch it, because pretty much everybody has Netflix.
I was pitching to our distributor. I was like, 420. come on, this is a holiday.
It's perfect. It sells itself.
Yeah, like, come on, just put a couple really great pop movies on the front page of Netflix for the week of 420. Let's go. And Nick, I think you're gonna find a normal. I think you're gonna find a normalcy with marijuana in the next 5 years that nobody could have ever envisioned, and one of them being that a big company like Netflix might actually have a 420 week.
Who do you think is watching Netflix? Where do you think Netflix and chill came from? It's potheads. Everybody got to smoke weed and then watch Netflix, because usually there's not much on if you've had Netflix. Like, you've watched the catalog. You're like waiting for new great things like Grounded to come on there so you can watch that.
That's right. You don't need more Doug Benson, talking about weed, because
Doug Benson's good, but it's not, you can only take so much, I think.
That's right. I think that's why Netflix tabled it in your defense, because they were just like, oh, that last Doug Benson special, it was just
Doug Benson
too much weed.
He took all our weed money.
Animals swimming in the ocean.
Right? Our weed budget is overdrawn because
right.
Doug Benson. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, he's our guy.
Yeah, maybe next year.
No, it's kind of, we got another funny story that happened that turned into a really interesting thing was that we played a film festival in Athens, Georgia, the Dixie Film Festival, which I was excited. I didn't go to UGA, but I went to West Georgia, so I was able to expose a few people that I went to school with to the film. They all kind of hauled themselves out to Athens. And the logo for that film, because it all takes place, in Florida, in Georgia, or not Georgia, but Florida and Alabama primarily. So I was like, well, it should have the poster should have like a tie into the South. And I, thought to myself, well, the Confederate flag is a pretty interesting, source, of artwork that people know immediately. So I was like, well, what if we change the stars into pot leaves? So in the back of my mind, I was like, that's going to be the flag of the marijuana culture, is this fake Confederate flag with the pot. So I was very proud of myself. And I thought it was good. And the artwork that was done by Susan Bowles, who was art director of a project that I worked on. She worked on it and came back, and I was like, oh my God, that's like way better than I thought in my mind that this poster would look.
And so, what other way to attract trolls on Facebook,
Well, then that's
transmogrification of the Confederate flag.
That is exactly what happened. And I couldn't believe it, because I was contacted by a gentleman who was going to do a film review. And I was familiar with the guy's work, and I was like, this guy's pretty fair. He's not like a critic. He'll either tell you it's worth seeing or not seeing. So, and it was going to be in Georgia, and I was like, okay, good. This is good that I've got his attention. And I was like, and I felt fair. I mean, you're always, as a creative person, you're always a little bit nervous that there's some little tick in there that they're not going to like. And they always, no matter how fair they are, they always say something nice, and they'll throw a little something in there just to let you know that they're paying attention.
Oh, they have to. They have to.
It's always a little something that just like, every filmmaker, it's like a knife in the heart, even if it's the slightest thing. So I was bracing myself for that. So I knew he sent me an email and said, hey, the review's coming out tomorrow, and it was a Friday. I was like, great, this is really great. So Friday morning, I got up early, and I was like, oh, good. I'm laying in bed, and I'm like everybody else, I'm checking my phone, and I'm like, oh, let's see what's on the review thing. And I read the review, and I was like, wow, that was a good review. I was excited. And then it said 4 comments, and I'm like, oh, okay. I went to the first comment, and it was like, this filmmaker is a disgrace to the University of West Georgia, and he's a Yankee, and I can't believe he basically desecrated the symbol of the Confederate Army. And I was like, oh, I didn't see that coming. And I was like, and then the next person said that I was like despicable to do that. And I was stunned. I couldn't believe it. But then we had posted the review on our social media stuff. And then like people, it was nuts. Like people just started responding to it. And then I got an email at like 4:00 that afternoon from the gentleman who did the review. He's like, I've been doing reviews for 20 years. He goes, this is the most these are the most comments I've ever gotten on any film in my career.
It struck a nerve.
I was like, oh my God. That was funny. I was like, just go see the movie.
Yeah. You're welcome, I guess.
Yeah,
I'm
right.
sorry for all the awful comments.
It was pretty funny, but like, some people they don't like that flag being messed with. And I really didn't think I thought it was certainly way cooler now.
Well, you just wait till y'all Qaeda gets a hold of that. They're gonna be pretty pissed.
Exactly. Y'all
Those are, oh yeah. So before we get out of here, give us a couple teaser stories from the movie. Like what was your favorite part, like story wise?
Because I really dig the flying part, the flying aspect of it. Yeah. And my Uncle Terry, he flew corporate with my grandfather, and it was very much, they fly some rich guys to, the Masters, wait until they're done all day. Don't go to the Masters, just wait at the airport, and then the rich guys come back, and then they fly. And I think, at some point, I think every pilot that does that, the joy of it can be a little bit tampered down. And when the opportunity came for him to fly, an exciting, thrilling type of thing, like going to Colombia and picking up marijuana and then flying to the United States. And when you fly to the United States, you have to put that plane on the deck. I mean, you can't go in at 10,000 feet. You got to go in at 100 feet. So you're avoiding all the radar installations. Wow. So that kind of flying, I think, really, to hear him, and then you definitely get it in the film. I mean, he's a passionate pilot, and it'll always be with him. So when he talks about his first time doing it, which is also the excitement of that is also shared in the trailer, but the first time he did it, they were coming back from Colombia, and I think they were in a Lockheed Lodestar, which is actually featured in the film, and landed in some watermelon field in Florida. And, the middle of the night, there's nothing there except a couple guys with flashlights, to give them some direction on where to land, and which is nuts anyway. And when he crawls over from the pilot seat back to open the door, it was his brother, my Uncle Jimmy, who was kind of running the ground crew, that was the first person he saw, just like going, holy, I think it was a great holy shit moment. And to hear them both tell that story, as a filmmaker, it was awesome. But as those are my uncles, who I just, at the time, I still do. I idolize those guys. They're great. They're just great people and great storytellers. And to have them so excited about something that their brother was doing, it was a great moment, and it was really cool to capture that on film. So.
Your uncles sound like the Evel Knievel of pot smuggling.
Well, they definitely had a couple mishaps, like Evel Knievel, and those, cataloging those. And like a lot of people, I think, like if you watch, gosh, I can't remember there was a really great documentary about smuggling in general, but it was more cocaine cowboys.
Yeah.
I mean, the way those guys tell the story, like nothing ever went wrong. We were, and that could have been
the cocaine
choice. Yeah,
yeah, possibly.
It could have been the film.
We're invincible.
It comes off as very much. We had everything planned out. We would fly in Northern California, and we'd put our pot in trucks and take them on tow trucks down south, and the cops never knew. I mean, it was like they were these calculated people that everything worked, for those guys. And that's when I watched those films, and they were very well done. And I wonder, I'm like, wow, man, these guys are badasses. They didn't make any mistakes. And then when I talked to my uncles, and even in their film, I'm like going, holy shit, they fucked up all the time. And it was like really refreshing, like, because they weren't perfect. And then as all these stories were developing, I'm like going, I bet there were some really good screw ups in the cocaine cowboy stuff that they just didn't share or something like that to give it more of an aura of badasses.
Oh, for sure. And that and the fact that those guys are staying up way more hours through the night planning, meticulously planning. Potheads are just like,
I can't imagine that. Yeah, I don't think that they had the close friendships that
yeah, right.
My uncles enjoyed.
Probably
And
a lot more paranoia.
oh my God, what a miserable existence.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Just even like the tenseness, I guess, of when they're telling the story about, you know, landing in this foreign land, you know, like what do we expect when we get there, and then to, you know, see how it all worked out. Like it's like two totally different sides of probably the same cartel at some point, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I think there was a lot of I mean, my uncles being of the hippie generation, they're, you know, they're into the whole hippie dogma type stuff.
Yeah.
And, you know, they believe that, you know, putting that stuff out there, I mean, they liked marijuana. They still like marijuana. And it's like, you know, my uncles are always like, you know, there's nothing, you know, pot's a natural thing. It's not like, you know, they didn't see it as like, you know, something that was ruining families or ruining, you know, different, you know, just there's a lot of ruin with cocaine. You know?
Right. But there was a lot of like, not mental, but a lot of verbal ruin about marijuana back then. And they were smart enough to be able to think for themselves and not buy into that whole reefer madness craze. I
mean, the same trade routes that those guys were using are the same ones used for cocaine. So, I mean, had they wanted to, they could have done it. But I think they felt that the karmatic weight of that was just more than they ever wanted to bear. And, you know, probably at that time, the jail time was probably similar. You know, it's not too much difference. So it's not like, I mean, I think it weighed heavily on them that was something that they didn't want to dance with. So,
well, plus, do you want to get into competition with the CIA? I mean, come on.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of their biz, or was, or whatever.
Yeah, somewhere out there's a young guy that's listening to his uncles that are CIA guys talking about that. Maybe there'll be a movie in 10 years.
Did I ever tell you the time we used to smuggle cocaine? That's interesting. I saw this article on Raw Story about why marijuana is banned, like the real reason, everything. And it reminded me of the very first episode of the Hot Box back in 2008 when we started this show. My friend Sandy and I started it. We went into that whole like Harry Anslinger and how he first was like, oh, weed's not that bad. But then the alcohol prohibition stopped and he had nothing to do. And he was like, oh, now weed's bad. We have a cause again. And yeah, that whole interesting thing that kicked off this prohibition and all of the lies and everything that kind of came with it to demonize the plant and get people to think a certain way about it. And the people that thought for themselves, the hippies and everything, like they were like, you guys are out of your mind. Weed is great.
I mean, it's certainly, you know, certainly with the medical marijuana, I mean, there's just some facts that people can't deny.
Yeah.
And, you know, I never knew anybody that crashed their car because they were smoking pot, you know, and I mean, they definitely ate some Doritos, but they didn't go out and go home and beat their wife or anything like that. And those are all kind of things that, at least in my family with my uncles, that was what they were kind of just trying to tell me. I mean, I've never, you know, they were pretty open with me about, you know, what their views were on pot. And at the time when we, you know, when I was out of college and before we even started this film, they're just like, this is who we are. This is what we do. You know, they don't see it as anybody getting hurt by their actions. And certainly now, I mean, certainly, you know, if you're smoking a joint in the 70s, I mean, there's a lot of people that paid a price, you know, to get that pot to you, you know, whatever. Right. Smugglers getting caught or whatever it is, there's risk, there's reward. And now as all that's being stripped away, it's been really freeing for people, you know, not to, I mean, God, there's like, I couldn't imagine what people that sell cigarettes, you know, what that burden would be.
Yeah, right. Do you smoke?
It's funny you're saying that, Sean, because I've been reading the book by the Cannabis Manifesto by Steve D'Angelo, and he's in his late 50s, and he's talking about growing up as a teenager and in his 20s and consuming cannabis, you know, Panama Red and Acapulco Gold and stuff that was not cultivated in the United States, but that was smuggled in. And, you know, we always kind of romanticize or turn into a stereotype that image of the high school or college kid, you know, smoking a joint of this stuff after school and the whole romance of 420. But you bring up a very good point. How the hell did it get here in the first place? And it was guys who had balls of brass like this and found a little romanticism and adventure in, bringing it back and maybe earning a fair living at it.
And one of the cool, like I said earlier, is that like the unintended consequences of this film is that it's a historical record of a group of people, not just my uncles, but probably hundreds and hundreds of pilots and guys on the ground and people that let you store marijuana in their basement and different things like that have been unrecorded. And like we said, this new generation, when they turn 18 or 21, depending on the state, they can go down to the cannabis club or whatever and then enjoy what they want freely without even knowing the history of it. So the bootlegger aspect of it was something that I know that the law enforcement guys really dug because, they love the cat and mouse chase. And, when you compare those two worlds, it's kind of neat and it's always a fun story. So it's kind of neat that way.
Yeah, who else is going to write the history? Like, if we want an actual fair account of it, of like truthful history, you can't rely on what you see in our history books that you grow up with in school. So it's good to have these records out there, especially with the internet.
It's great now that like people are like myself are telling this family story. I know that there's hundreds of people out there like me that have a similar story that they'll document it, and that'll be on the record and they'll be really great. And maybe one day, 20 years from now, people will see value in telling that story about, well, why was marijuana so criminalized? And why were we locking people up for pot? And those types of things. And this will all help the narration. I don't anticipate the government being the arbiter of a true and accurate story, but as long as we have platforms like Google and Amazon and types of things like that, where you can set up your own website and download your own movie, people will be able to tell these stories. And that's why I think documentaries are so important, no matter what the topic. They start the conversation. And I think I got lucky with how the times have changed, and now it'll be looked at as more of a historical record, a fun historical record.
In 60 years, it'll be playing in a kiosk at the Smithsonian in D.C. So.
Yeah, exactly. You guys actually got in trouble for this? Weird.
Yeah,
Grandpa,
exactly.
What's wrong with? That's cool. So what do you got some other projects you're working on next? Or are you kind of taking a break, I'm sure, for now? Or
I did a TV pilot based on the guy who actually again, in documentary films, like the plane that we used was a Lockheed Lodestar, and there aren't that many of them. And I found this wonderful guy named Scott Holm, was an aviation broker who had just by chance had just restored that plane that we use in the film.
Oh, wow.
And he was so gracious. I told him the story, I told him what was going on, and I needed a plane. And he was like, "Your uncle's flew this plane?" I was like, "Yes." And he was like, "I'm there." So he, at a great expense to himself, because those things cost about $1,000 an hour to fly.
I bet.
He flew it down to this little airport that we were at, and we started a really nice friendship. So through a couple other contacts, we just shot a pilot called Plane Nuts, and it's about him. He's an aviation broker, so he goes around and he finds these planes and restores them and sells them. And I didn't even know this world existed. So that's the latest thing I'm working on, and I'm researching a couple other like full feature-length documentaries. So it's just never ending. Yeah, my wife rolls her eyes all the time.
That's cool, though. It's something you enjoy doing. And going back to when you were talking about your team, it just sounds like a bunch of friends going out to go shoot a movie. It's not like, oh, I gotta go to work now. Like that makes it that much better.
It is. That is a really great aspect to it, because we do find ourselves like, and it's definitely collaborative, because I'm in no way, I rely heavily on that team. And that Liz and Andy and certainly Jim and Chuck and Brian, our editor, it's a collaborative effort. And it's always like, sometimes I get this vision in my head and they go, "Yeah, that's really good." Or, somebody will go, "Yeah, Sean, that sucks.
This is terrible." Next.
And you need those people around you.
Yeah.
Like, you need the guy. You don't want to surround yourself with yes men.
No.
You'll end up with a horrible, piece of crap.
Yeah,
So,
you would never get anything done because every idea is great and you would
You're a
try and
genius.
pursue it, and then that's.
If anybody ever told me I was a genius, I would get rid of them.
Yeah, you're fired. But thank you. Well, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you taking the time out to come talk to us about the film and everything.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Groundedthemovie.com. You guys can check it out there. And like you said, iTunes, Google Play, Amazon. We'll put links to all that stuff in the show notes at hotboxpodcast.com. So
really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely,
Pleasure
man.
speaking with you guys.
Cool, man. We'll catch you later.
man.
All right. Take care. Write a review.
Yeah, definitely.
will.
We'll get
I will.
we'll get everyone to do that. Go write
Awesome.
reviews and share it out on social networks so we can see it on Netflix.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.
All right. Sean Crowell, groundedthemovie.com. Definitely check that shit out. It's a pretty awesome film. So thank you guys for listening. Hotboxpodcast.com. Check it out every week. We're on Stitcher. We're on iTunes also. Project LD50, new hip hop album. If you guys like that stuff, it's on Google Play, Bandcamp, iTunes, stuff like that. So follow the Hotbox on Twitter and on the Facebooks. And Gooey and I will talk to you guys next week. All right. Peace out.